Hey, how y'all doing? My name is Tyler Smith.
My name is Camille Perkins.
And I'm Jacaria Wilkin.
And today we'll be going over social and cultural constraints in motor development. Camille's going to start us off.
Okay, so our chapter objectives are to discuss the role of socio-cultural constraints in motor development, define the role of specific social agents such as parents and schools in the individual development, and to explain the socialization process and how it differs for various groups. So I'm going to discuss the role of socio-cultural constraints in motor development. When social or cultural factors influence the types of physical activity that people get involved in, those factors are known as socio-cultural constraints. Socio-cultural attitudes of groups of people either encourage or discourage people to participate in certain motor behaviors. Societal and cultural beliefs, attitudes, and stereotypes can often encourage and discourage motor behaviors. This pertains to the ecological perspective. Those who believe in this perspective also believe that social and cultural influences have a great impact on how people interact with individual and task constraints. An example of this would be media coverage of sports events. So typically on ESPN and things like that, we will see coverage of male-dominated events with all males. If there were examples of more women playing these sports on media that's broadcasted, social media, television, radio, etc., that would encourage more participation in said sports. So an example would be, how does it feel to be the first woman in the NFL?
I mean, it feels pretty good, going out there doing what I got to do, 3 touchdowns a night. I'm just doing this all for my fans, particularly for my women. To my women, never let a man tell you you can't do anything. You can do anything just as good as he can. Just be mama.
Women playing football, wrestling, racing, etc. So this brings us into Title IX. As of the late 1970s, girls were still not expected or allowed to participate in sports. This attitude about girls in sports kept their physical activity and motor development limited. The passage of Title IX in 1972 struck the change of this attitude towards girls and women in sports, and over time made it more acceptable for girls and women to participate in sports. Title IX requires equal opportunity for girls and women in sports. Society and culture have a profound effect on individuals' movements and behaviors, particularly in sports and physical activity. Title IX made all of this more equal and more possible. However, still to this day, most sports are male-dominated. And in the context of motor development, most American children do not become things like sumo wrestlers, which is more prominent in Japan, perform archery, which is prominent in England, or perform samba, which is in Russia. Most American adults would not even try any of these sports or try to participate. In the United States, these sports are not encouraged or promoted. Thus, society and culture influence the choice of physical activity in which people participate. The chances of a young American girl or boy to pursue a career in sumo wrestling are slim to none. This results in an entire group of movements being discouraged and limited, thus likely to be never performed.
Okay, and now I will be defining the role of specific social agents. Social agents, known as significant others, are the people most likely to play a role in an individual's socialization process, such as family members, peers, teachers and coaches, or siblings. Family members has a major influence in the process of socialization into physical activities as well as other pursuits because the family's influence begins very early in a child's life. Families are primary source of social constraints. Reinforce the behaviors deemed appropriate through their gesture, praise, and rewards at the same time. They punish. Everything is combined. Family members has a major influence in the process of socialization into physical activities, as well as other pursuits because the family's influence begins very early in a child's life. Family is a primary source of social constraints. Reinforce the behaviors deemed appropriate through their gestures, praise, rewards. At the same time, they punish inappropriate behaviors. Parents. Reflecting parents' interest and encouragement during early years. Parents can encourage children to engage in either physical or Reflecting parents' interest and encouragement during early years. Parents can encourage children to engage in either physical or sedentary activities. Individual parents may play different roles in socializing children into physical activity. Siblings. Siblings form an infant's first play group, and this may act as an important socialization agent into physical activities such as this. Wish I had a phone to talk to my friends. Yeah, I'm gonna be like you.
Hello? Hey.
Hello.
No,
Hey.
no, I'm just at home.
No, I'm just at home.
Oh,
Oh, let me call you back.
can you move?
Can you move?
Oh my God.
Nope. Mama said I got Your peers also have the potential to reinforce or counteract the sports socialization process begun in the family. Coaches and teachers influencing individuals' involvement in sports and physical activity. Male athletes consistently report that coaches and teachers influence both their participation in their selection of sports during their adolescence and young adults. Female athletes report that teachers and coaches influence them during childhood and adolescence. Aversive socialization occurs when teachers or coaches embarrass children in front of their peers, overemphasize performance criteria at the expense of learning and enjoyment, or plan class activities that result in overwhelming failure rather than success.
2, 3. And almost the ending, here we come, and I'll be explaining the socialization process and how it differs from various groups. So there's 3 major elements to the socialization process. You have socializing agents, social situations, personal attributes. The socialization process is the process by which one learns the social role in groups with certain values, morals, and rules. So the socialization process is going to be those 3 things once more again: significant others, social situations, and personal attributes. To give you more in depth what that is, your significant others are people who are around you, your siblings, your friends, and those are your socializing agents. Social situations are where your socialization takes place. So school, Prairie View, home, Arlington, playgrounds, grooves, whatever you want to call it. And then personal attributes. Your personal attributes would be your individual constraints, which are your height, how tall you are, how strong you are, which is your strength, your size, how much space you take up, and also to top it off, your motivation. What is your most thing that motivates you? There's 4 types of socialization. You have primary, secondary, class, and race. So I'm going to give you more details about those. Your primary socialization is your first experience with the language, values, beliefs, behaviors, and etc. Your race socialization is the process through which children will learn behaviors, values, and attitudes and associated with racial groups. Your class socialization is teaches the norms, values, traits, and behaviors you develop based on your social class. And your secondary socialization is the process when you become social outside of the home. So, like I said earlier, your school, you're out at an event, your clubs, your organizations, and then etc. This all turns into a peer group. This is how you find your social group and who you are really. Sorry for all the paper. Peer groups. So your peer group is basically your social groups whose members have interests in social positions, usually age in common. And these things are sectioned into 4 things. So that's your nerds, jocks, leading crowd or popular crowd, and your burnouts. Your burnouts are the people who are not going to finish their education and have other endeavors. Your leading crowd are people who are able to balance both being smart and having a social life. And your jocks are the people who are very talented at sports, not too smart, but they make it happen. And of course, we know about nerds. That's good people. People who are striving to make A's, and that's it. That's the stereotypical role. Going on, the social constraints in action. your social constraints in action is basically your stereotype behaviors and gender specific. Gotta get it out. Okay, so this all relates to what kind of sex, which means your biological male, females. Your gender is on a spectrum, which refers to culturally defined sociological characteristics used as differentiating between males and females. And your gender typing or gender role stereotyping occurs when a parent or significant other encourages activities that are deemed gender appropriate, like this. Alright.
Hello.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. How was your day?
Man, it was tiring. What food at?
Well, it's almost ready. You know, I've been at home all day doing laundry, cleaning, cooking. Like, I'm almost there.
Man, that's just sounds like a whole lot.
It is a whole lot.
I don't think it's a lot. You know, I think that's just bare minimum. You know.
Because you go to work every day and I stay home and cook and clean?
Well, I mean, I didn't see you wake up at 8 o'clock this morning.
Say bye together. And that is the conclusion of our video on social and cultural constraints in motor development. Thanks for coming and watching our YouTube channel.
For so many reasons.
Bye.